Right, so yes, I was mentioning that entity can be anything which can be able to be described or to be distinguished. This is an example of the entity which, sorry, these are examples which of entity which you can have here. For example, a person, car, house, employee, or city. These can be the entities. This is the way we can describe the entity. For example, a person, these are different types of entities. Just keep in mind, these are the different types of entities. A person is an entity. What about a student? What about a student as an entity, right? What about patient? Entity. So possibilities there. Entity can have another entity, right? Entity can have another entity. So we shall see something called entity set. Okay, the entity set. For example, place is an entity. City, country, state, they are the description of the place. A place we can describe by this, let's say by street, by country, even by state. Event, all these are the entities which you can have. Clear? These are the types of entity, example of entity. You define it, you can even give an example of an entity. There are three main concepts which you have to concentrate on when we deal with the ER model. ER model or entity relational model. Number one, entity. Number two, attribute. Number three, relationship. In our previous class, we discussed about the so-called attribute. What is an attribute? In other words, how do we call attribute inside the database? Field. Excellent. So we call them the field. They describe the entity and the relation. When we say relation, for example, a name, an ID, they are related either to a student or to an employee. Relationship, which are meaningful interaction among other objects, so they can be related. For example, a student is taking a course. So the relationship between a course and a student, please, when you smile, you distract me. Try to avoid, because I wonder, what is he smiling? So it distracts me, please. If you have any kind of joke, raise a hand, clack it. I like to laugh. But when you laugh when I'm teaching, I wonder, what's wrong? Okay? So please, control it. And it will tempt me to ask you questions. Right? Yes. Please. You tempt me to ask you questions. All right. So you're right. Okay, thank you. So here we talk about the relationship or the interaction among the object. Just for your quick, the reason why I mentioned that, when you smile, I wonder, is it making sense or does not make sense? That's clicked in my brain. Is it making sense or there's no sense in it? So please try to try to make sense when you smile, when you laugh. All right? It distracts. All right, so here we have the relationship. So we can have the interaction among those objects or among those entities. For example, I mentioned a student and a course. The relationship can be take, or a relationship can be enroll. So it's a relationship among objects. A course is an object. A student is an object. I mentioned there is two things which are interchangeably. Entity and object. When I say entity or object, please hear the same thing. Okay, understand the same thing. So these are the relationship, 3 concepts. There is the last one which I did not mention here. You write down in your note or in your study material. The last, which is here, it's called constraints. The constraints. Constraints is also the main concept in ER model. Okay, the constraints. Constraints we saw they can be termed as integrity or the set of rules you need to apply on that. For example, in our previous class, we saw something called null, not null, unique, and yes. So we saw this. These are what? Constraints. These are the constraints. So these are the things, 3 main points, 3 main concepts which you need to understand in this. Is it clear? Is it clear? Oh, thank you. So next. Now we have entity types, another terminologies. I mentioned them as the terminologies. Okay? What does it mean, entity type? And what does it mean, entity instance? This is very, very important to understand. If you don't understand, let me repeat once again. Okay? When we say entity type, I will give you the definition and you give me the example. Okay? This is entity type. Okay? We have a set of entities that share same properties or attribute. That's called the entity set or entity type. Is a set of entities of the same type that share the same properties or attributes. Can you give an example?
For entity type.
Yes, for entity type. Can you give an example? Think and give an example. Entity type is the same as entity set. Okay, a person. Okay. Make a set, yes. A person, it's an entity. Okay, students, ID, a name.
First we student entity type, then we type like student ID,
Okay.
student address.
Okay, good. That is a student. Student is an entity. Student is an entity. One student is an entity. For example, you created a table, and inside the table, you inserted certain rows. You create a student as a table, and you put student ID, student first name, last name, country, and so on. So when you inserted, for example, insert student number 1, ID 1, name, Jonathan, country, Indonesia. Student number 2, Daniel, country, Russia. So these are what? These are the part of the set of the entities. Okay? So a student is an entity. It becomes a set when you have a different object in it. I give one more example. I have here markers, correct? How many? 1, 2, 3, right? This is a set of markers. 3, right? This is a set of entity. One marker is only one is what? Entity, right?
Yes.
When I take these 2 becomes what? A set of entities. They share properties. What properties these are sharing? What properties are sharing this? They are markerized. What other properties? When I say property, same as attribute. Color, right? They share the color. What is name? What are the markers? Right? Brand. Right. Both are blue, the colors you mentioned. So these are the what? They share same properties or attributes. Clear?
Yes.
Very good. So this is it. So you need to understand properties and attribute. Samuel, do you understand? Good. Next. Now we have the entity type. Also, it can be known as a group of objects with the same property. Clear now? What is an object? What is an object? Object is an entity, right? So when they share the same property, put in the parentheses as well. Property is also what? Attribute. Please, as you keep studying, there are certain terminologies which you need to know, which are common to all IT. Number one is the property in a programming. Number two is method or function. You understand? When we say properties, okay? Properties, just for you to understand, any object has two things. Number one, property. Number two, function. Same concept here. Number one, property. Number two, function. Put in parentheses in property. Property can be known as an attribute. Function can be known as method or action. Please note down, because they're all related to what we are looking here. Okay, so we have they share same properties. Property means the attribute, characteristics. So these are the keywords which you need to understand. So an object has that too, right? So another one, each entity type is identified by name in the list of properties, correct? For example, another one, this is what? The name is remote, right? And then what are the properties? Color, right? Bland. These are properties, right? So these are properties you can keep name them. Color, brand, year of manufacture, you can keep name them. These are what the way you can identify the entities. Next one, which is very important. This one. Entity is equal to what? Table. So when you call a table, you say create a table. You are creating what? Entities. Okay? Those are entities. Now, what you put inside is what? Create a table. It's a ID, integer, not null. Name, varchar, 20. What is it? What is that? Those are what? Attributes. Those are the attributes. Okay? So entity is equal to a table. Is equal to a table. Now, next one, remember, look the title, look the heading of this. Now we understand entity type or entity set. We haven't understood entity instances. Important, because somewhere, Kunakon, somewhere, you will be asked about instances. Okay? Now, entity instances is as follows. Table rows are equivalent or equal to what? Entity instance. When you say a row, for example, you created a table with the attributes. Do you create the rows? Question to you, all of you. When you create a table, Do you create rows? How many of you say yes, we create the rows as well? When you create a table, do you create rows? Do you create the rows? How many say no? How many say no? How many of you say no? If you're not sure, no problem. I will settle the answer. How many say no? Okay. Okay. How many say okay? 3. How many say yes? I saw you raising hand 2 times. Yes. You're yes. Okay. How many say no? You're not sure. Who is not sure? But I have seen few hands. When we create a table, we don't create a row. Rows are created when you insert. That's not the creation, it's insertion. Oh, at the same time, that's copy paste. We don't. When you create a table, you create attributes. Then you insert the rows. Okay? Then you insert the rows. So here, instances are what? The rows which we insert. Is it clear? So entity set is made by the attributes. And also, we can include some types of rows inside. You may create a table without a row, but you cannot have a table without columns. Okay? Without columns or attributes. Look at an example here. So these are the rows which we created here. These are the table, attribute, and the domain, and these are the rows which we have inserted. Row 1, we inserted these. These are the things which insert after creation. Okay? These are the attributes. These are the instances. So you have something called entity instances. Entity instances. We have entity type as well. The entity type as well. Now, can anyone now try to guess what is entity relational model? What is entity relational model? Because that's going to be the second part to come in. Okay? These are the entity type set and entity instance at the same time. Now, when we come to entity relational model, we are going to represent database logically. Means the way in a logic. It makes logic. What does it mean, logic? Logic, something which makes sense, right? Yes. It makes sense, right? And also, you may say logic as a blueprint here. How a database can look like. Okay, that's called logic. For any designer, I haven't seen a designer who doesn't know how to draw. If you know how to draw. Okay, because when I say draw, you want it. Maybe you are a designer who doesn't know how to draw. If you know how to draw, most of the time, you are prone to be a good designer. So here, we need to have a blueprint of a draw, so we can give to the architect to put in a form of computer type, and then the engineer will do what? Come and build. This lab is made by the engineers and architect. The architect did what? Architect design, right? They give you design. Do you know the design of this university? You go to an office there, you look that design. That's a blueprint, right? But it's not yet. I mean, it's not very complete. That's according to the to the architect. The entire, if it is complete, then it will be like the way it is made there, right? So the engineers, they look this, and then they build. So same way here, entity relationship model, they give you an idea of how a database will be built, physical database, which you created such a table and so on. A physical can be touched. Okay? Physical can be what? Touched. Touched in a, you cannot touch on the screen and say this is a table. You cannot do that. Touch in IT, we mean they contain or they have memory space. For example, a table which you created, they have a space in the memory. Okay? Design, they don't. Next part here. This is rational model. So which was introduced by Chen. You remember Chen? Peter Chen? Yeah. Do you remember Chen? We have a Chu Chen. Chu Chen is not Chu Chen is not in a class. Okay, so but who is a Chen? Chen Ishi, yeah, Chen Ishi is there. I forgot. Chen Ishi is here. So Peter Chen, is the one who proposed this rational model in 1976. Okay, and what he mentioned that ER model, data model, is a collection of objects of similar structure called the entity set. That's what we settled that one. Then we have a different relations. You remember this one? One-to-one, one-to-many, and the many-to-many. These are what? Relational model. Now we need to design them. We need to design them. Okay? We need to design them. So these are the rational model. An example for you to remember, this one. This is quite familiar to all of us. Okay? We have an employee. Employee must have one ID or employee number. This is one-to-one. One employee, one ID. Right? Next one. We have the so-called one-to-many. You know, one department can have many employees. Many to many. One employee, is it possible you can have many salaries? Can we have 1 second? Okay, let's. These are the relationships which are mentioned here. We can have many. This is ER model. Pardon me? Yeah, many. Sorry, yes, I was mentioning here. Can you have many?
Yes.
So certain situation may be there, right? Circumstances may be there. Maybe you can have a different jobs. That's okay. Yeah. Now we have these terminologies which I want you to get. When we say a key in a computer is used to identify a record in a database. For example, ID is a key. So it identifies other attributes in database. Okay, that's number one. I think this we have discussed. It's the same way here. So it is the same way for you to understand that you can be able to identify other attributes or identify one or more instances of the set. That's called a key. Anyone has a doubt on this? You need more explanation on the key? We carry different keys. Pardon me? Once again, okay, fine. When we say a key, it can be an attribute which can be used to identify other attributes. We saw, I think in the last class, we mentioned something called, what is that? We mentioned, for example, if you have your ID, there's a terminologies which I've used. I will check once again. But a key, in a few words, it can be used to identify other attributes. For example, primary key or unique key, they can help you to identify what other attributes are associated with it. So the next one here, this example, you can see primary key, super key, composite key. Today, in today's lab, we shall see the remaining one. Okay. Now we look to these are the terminologies which I designed in such a way to write down so that you can, when you start to draw them, you can understand them better. Okay. When do we say a composite key? Let me share this. Okay, so this is very, very vital or important. All right, so these are very important here. When we say a composite key, what does it mean, a composite attribute? All of you know our attribute, right? What is an attribute? It's a property, or it's a column, or it's a field. So that's a property. That's a attribute. So when we say a composite key, a composite attribute, this is said to be this. Let me increase the size of this one. Okay, it can be an attribute. I'll write here, so you can write even with your. This can be an attribute that can be divided, okay, into I say further parts. If I say further parts, we can have other attributes as well. Further parts put here into other attributes. What does it mean? Means you have one attribute, and this attribute is going to be broken into another attribute. I give you an example. Take an example of a name. Example. I give you an example here. For example, name. And increase the size. Take an example. Name. Name is what? A name is A name is what? What is a name? Attribute. Right. And when do we say it's a composite? What is a composite attribute according to the definition we have here? It's an attribute, a composite attribute is what? An attribute that can be divided into further parts or can be divided into another attribute. Anyone who does not understand now? Nobody? Now, look at example. When you say a name, write down, you can have first name, middle name, and last name. Is it divided? Yes. Right. So somewhere you say, write your name. Right? You can write the full name, or you can write one name. Right? So this name can be divided into others. For example, name, first name, second name. Who can give me another example of a composite? Who can give me another example of composite? Composite attribute. An attribute? Yes, please. Address. Okay, he gave an example of an address. Excellent. Address. How can you divide? Yes. Okay. Okay. Address is the same, or you give a different example? Different. Okay. It's a building. Okay. We can have IT building, science building, and we can have a different building, right? Okay. Yes, address as well. You give an address, street, right? Door number, right? City, state, province, district, right? This comes under what? Comes under this composite. Take an example here. You write name, and the name can be divided. We can have first name. We can have last name. We can even have what? We can have first name. You can put here middle name as well. Middle name. Okay, middle name. This is an example of an attribute. Let me increase here. All right, so this one. All right, so another one which we have here is a single attribute. A single attribute is the one which cannot be broken. So here, an attribute here says single attribute, an attribute which cannot be divided. Okay, we cannot divide it. It cannot be split into parts. For example, we give an example. For example, if I say my weight, the weight you cannot divide into weight 1, weight 2, weight 3. You have same weight. Okay, so we can have this as an example. All right, we have an example. This is a weight, it's an attribute which cannot be divided. Another one, single value attribute. In a single value attribute, so this is a single value attribute. It's somehow it may be sound like the single attribute, but single value attribute, it takes only a single value. You cannot break it. For example, your age is a single value, right? It's a single valued attribute. All right, but most of the time, single value attribute, it can come from the composite attribute. Okay, it can come from composite attribute. So here it mentions, or we can mention, that a single value attribute, it can be an attribute it is an attribute. It is an attribute which can have a single value, okay, which can have a single value for a particular entity, right? For a particular entity. I give an example. Take an example. We take an age. You can have only, let's say, if you're 19, you have 19 years old, right? So you have a single value here. You cannot say I have 19 and or I have 17. You cannot say, right? You cannot say. So you have to have a single value here. You take only one single value. Another one, which is very important as well, it is multi-value attribute. Multi-value attribute. So this multi-value attribute, this can have, these are the attributes. Increase. Attribute which can have multi-value. They can have multiple value sets, okay, for a particular entity, for a particular entity. I give an example, and then I let you go for a break. Example. I'm going to give you an example. For example, you have an entity. Let's say you have an entity called, let's say, an entity which is called certificate. Certificate, right? So certificate, you can have a university certificate, birth certificate, what else? Course certificate, birth certificate, divorce certificate. So you can have a different certificates. So make sure that when you break with your girlfriend, she has to give you a certificate. Okay? So that nobody will say, oh yeah. Make sure. So these are different. For example, when you say certificate here, you can have multiple value set for particular entity. This is an entity. This we have another entity called certificate. For example, university certificate, birth certificate. This can have a different attribute as well. Okay. So we continue from here right after the break. Please come as soon as possible because we have something to draw. I told you to bring a paper. This we have to convert them into draw part. So we take another 15 minutes, then we go to the lab site and we do certain things in the lab as well. Okay, now I mentioned here. So the break is over now. We continue from here. Look into the entities here. So this is all about, or this is the first part which we looked here about multi-valued attribute. Okay, attribute which can have multiple sets for particular entities. If we look to this one, did you find another one which can be given as an example? Who can give another example of this? What could be other example to this one to support this?
About student.
Pardon me? About student? Which one?
Student. And that would be like ID, name.
That is one attribute. This, remember, a student can have certificate, but certificate can be many. Pardon me? Phone number. Okay, phone number. Phone number, phone number, phone number. Multiple. Okay, let's say.
Major.
Okay, major. You can have many majors.
Yes.
Or phone number. Phone number. You can have more than phone number. Let's say you have true move. You have AIS. You can keep. He mentioned a major. Let's say you have major. You can be ASL. IT is a major as a faculty. You major in IT, you have a minor in science. Let's say you have science. All right, so you can keep them. So these are the examples of what we call the multivariate attribute. Okay, the multivariate attribute as well. And another one, which is also important for you to understand, it's known as derived value attribute. Okay, derived attribute. In this derived attribute, all right, that is in this derived attribute, this one derived attribute, the derived attribute can be, let's say, can be created, can be formed from another attribute. Anyone can give an example for this? Who can give an example for this? Do you have an example for the following? Pardon me?
Last name can be derived from
Which one? Last name can be derived from name. Correct. Correct. Pardon me? Each certificate. Okay. Okay. Last name can be derived from the name, right? We can create this one. Can be formed from another attribute. What you mentioned is correct. For example, we have an attribute. Let's say we have an attribute called DOB. What is a DOB? Date of birth.
data of birth.
This is a date of birth, right? Date of birth. Okay. Date of birth. So we can have attribute from this? Which attribute can come from date of birth? Which attribute can come from the date of birth?
Year.
Huh?
Year.
Year, right? Year.
Year.
Year. We say date of birth. If you know the year with which I was born, you can know my age. So you can have an attribute called age. So an age attribute is derived from date of birth. You understand? So this is called derived attribute. Attribute is going to be created from another attribute. Okay? From another attribute. Another one, which is seems to be third the last. Another attribute which you can have here can be known as a stored attribute. Stored attribute. In the stored attribute, it is an attribute which can store another attribute. For example, date of birth is a stored attribute. Okay? An attribute which can keep or which can be derived from, if I put it in that way. Attribute which can be derived from. For example, date of birth is an attribute. Age is what? Derived attribute. So date of birth is what? Stored attribute. Okay? Stored attribute. This is known as let me increase this one. Sorry. So this is an attribute. I'm right here. I'm an attribute from which a value of one attribute can be derived from. Derived from. I give an example. Bob is an attribute. Date of birth is an attribute, and age. Let's say no. Bob is a store. Is a store. Is a store. Right here is a stored attribute. So we can derive from this one. What can we derive from this one? Age. Age can be derived here. Is derived from BOB. To make it more easy for you to understand. Okay, so this one is like one drives another, so we can call them this drive attribute. Right? Are they clear? How many did we see? We saw single, we saw multiple value, we saw composite. What else did we see? Derived, and the last one is saw stored attribute. Right? So these are the way the attribute can be created. Why? If you understand this, then ERD becomes more easier for you to do. When you see the symbol, you'll be able to understand. Right? You'll be able to understand. All right, so these are the example which you can take from there. This one which you see here, these are the ERD representation. That's why I told you to bring a paper and a pen or a book so you can write this symbol of representation. This will save your life. Will save your life. A rectangle. And now I have my clicker here. Here. A rectangle. You can even write by yourself. A rectangle symbolize entity, or it can be an entity set. Right? Entity is symbolized by what? A rectangle. Okay? This erupts. This erupts symbolize what? Attribute. This one is what? Diamond. The diamond symbol symbolizes what? Relationship. Dotted erupts symbolize what? Attribute. You know derived attribute? Do you know a derived attribute? Do you remember? Did you write down? I'll show you. We'll show it here. Yes. It's an example. So keep in mind, connect the dots so that you can understand it. Okay? All right, so we are there. Where are we here? Okay. Is the screen changing? No. The screen is not changing. Okay, yeah, this is what I mentioned here. Right, so on this part here, as you can see, the part which we have there, this rectangle is what? Entity, not always entity set. Yes, it can be entity set. We call it entity. This erupts attribute, relationship, derived attribute, optional one, optional many. So this is the way we're going to represent it. Okay? And another one which you have in here, a weak entity. I believe this weak entity can be, this weak entity is an entity which has dependence. For example, you all depend on the parent, right? Or you may depend on the sponsor for education. A child can depend on a father. Or let's say from here, if my wife is not working, she has a dependent visa. She depends on me who works. So these are called the weak entities. If one entity depends on another, means it cannot exist without another one, then that one will be called as a weak entity. Morgan, are you there?
Yes.
Good. This is what? What is multivariate attribute?
So it's been same properties but
Mm-hmm. Give an example. Certificate, yes. Composite, and these are different, right? Phone number, so we can have them here. So you have to represent like this way. Very important. When you draw, when I read it, or when another designer sees it, they understand what you mean. This one will carry you till the last year project. You will use this in your last year project. When you want to design the database of your project, please, when you come to this, remember. Okay? So this identifying relationships. So this one, let's say you have a dependent one. So you can use this double erupts to mention the relationship. The line which you see here is a link. For example, you want to link what? You want to link attribute to the entity. So use what? Line. You can use line with the vertical bar. You can use line with, what is that? Crow's foot, right? The crow's foot. to mention mandatory many. If you put 0 here, it's what? Optional. You understand? Okay. Any doubt? Any question? Before we make the first draw, I don't think my pen here will work out. First will be fine. Is a problem. That's not show. That's not show. Okay. Let me download it here. That will save our life at this moment. But I think it's not important. Okay, I just want to show you here. I'm trying to install one of the paper which I can use here so that I can draw it here for all of us to see the references of it. As it is being downloaded here, I think it's done. So I just want to bring the following. Okay, so I just want to come up with this one so we can try to see what we can draw here. Suppose you have two entities here. Let's say you have an entity called student. Okay, you're going to draw the first relationship, or you're going to make the first ER or entity relation model. You need to specify your entities. 1 minute, I just want to bring, let me get from here. No. Okay, so here, I just have mentioned here, so you can write it. I'm not sure why this is not. I don't know why this is not working. Let's say you have a student in the entity and you want to draw the ERD model. So this is going to be a student. This is a student. You can draw, and this is going to be here. You write the name. Let's say this is going to be a student. You can write the full name here. All right? The full name here. And you need to specify the relationship, or you need to specify the attribute which are connected to this. Remember, an entity is specified by what? By a rectangle. Okay? Again, here, let me write here. Let's say a student has what? A student has attribute. What's the first attribute? Register number, right? Let's say has register number. Oops. My 0 is not it. You concentrate on this. We have a student. Here we have a student relation. This is a student. This is a student attribute, entity. And let's say here we have course entity. This is the course entity. This is the entity representation, right? Right?
Yes.
Now, any entity has what? Attribute. So, a line symbolizes what? It's a link. Yes, a link. So, here, what about this? This is attribute. So, let's say a student has what? ID. Password. A student has first name and name. I put a name so that you can include everything here. Here we can have name. Name. And what else can we have? Okay. Okay, correct. Here you can have DOB. These are not. Right? Yes. And of course, what about course? Course. What are the attributes of the course? We have course ID. It's a course ID. And we have course name. What else? Huh? Course room. Lecture. Course year. We can have year. We can have let's say lecture ID. Of course, yes, lecture. It takes a keep name there. Now let's put them here. We write here is gonna be course ID, and here we have name, and here the reason why I'm avoiding to put them here, I'm going to link them. I'm going to link these two entities, student entity and the course entity. And here I'm going to have another one called lecturer. Actually, you can have like a lecturer name, or here you can put there. Let me put a here. Let me write an year here. So let's say here we have a year. A year, right? Now, something important here, when you draw, remember this should be the erupts, right? We have to make them as erupts. So let me try my best to erupts it. ID. Any primary key, you need to underline it. Any primary key, underline it. We are going to look primary key now in a few minutes, how to get a primary key. For example, your roll number is what? Primary key. Primary key, it has a two. It can be combined, unique, and not null. Remember, unique helps you to not have duplicate, to avoid, it helps you to maintain redundancy. So when you draw, any primary key should be underlined. Okay? Now this is the first thing. Now when you see them here, you understand these are what? Attributes. Okay? Now relationship between attribute is what? What is the symbol of relationship?
Diamond.
Diamond. So here we put diamond here as like this. And then we link them. And then we link them. Here you can say student, we can put enroll or student takes a course. This is a relationship. That's why relationship verb is what? Verb is standard as a relationship. Remember, table, we said that a table is equal to what? A table is equal to entity, right? Table is same as entity. And again, table is again equal to duration. So when we say entity relationship, we mean the same. The way they related the relationship, even you can say the relationship. From these entities, we create the relation. Same interchangeably. We may use the relation to mean the table in this database. Okay? In this database entity diagram. Do you understand? Understand? Is it fast? Not yet. Somebody has said not yet. I ask, is it fast? Not yet. I'm waiting when to be it. But I try. Okay? So this is first part to understand. We have what? Entity relational diagram. This is what? Entity relational diagram. This is entity relational diagram. Are they related? These are they related? This entity are they related? Yes. A student is related to what? Course. And attribute are related to the course. So this is what we need to draw and make. Okay? This is what we need to make in entity relational diagram. All right, so these are the main parts, and this will support what you have seen in what we have learned in a previous class, where we can even symbolize in this way. What other way? The relationship one can take, let's say, one student can have, let's say, many courses. This is a student, this is a course. All right, by Peter Chenishi. Okay, so by Peter Chen, so we can represent in this way, but mainly we depend on this ERD to explain the entities and the relations which we have there. Okay, so these are the parts which you have to understand. Now, if I want to break this into certain things, how would you represent the for example, if this name here, a name can be, it's a composite, right? Name is what? Name is a composite attribute. What is a composite attribute? It can have other attributes attached to it. For example, here we can have last name, we can have a middle name, we can even have first name. Okay, so we can do it this way. These are composite composite attribute there. So the other one we shall build in the next class.
So how do we differentiate it? What is like single derived attribute if we are drawing like that?
Pardon me?
How can we like differentiate when we are drawing like what is single?
A drive for a drive?
No, like when we are drawing, right? When we are drawing these relationship model, how do we know that which attribute is which type?
Oh, we know by the shape we give. For example, which one can have a drive? For example, which one can be a derived one? For example, we have a date of birth here, right? You may symbolize like this way. You may symbolize age. Here, you mean age as what? Derived. You give a shape like this way. Otherwise, if you make age as a complete circle, then it means it's what? It's a composite to it. If you give dot, you mean different. Okay, you mean different. You give different. Thank you. Or a double circle, to mention that this is going to be multivariate, so you have to mention in that way.
What about single value and composite?
A single value. That's what I say. The single value, for example, the one which does not derive anything. Correct? For example, ID, you can name it as a single value.
This one is
Yes.
thank you.
Oh, wait. All right. So, any other question? Right. Okay. So, I think. All right. I'm going to give you one so that you can focus on what you're looking here. Because I see that the time we have, if you start, I'm going to show you only one thing which was pending, or which is the primary key only. You can start your RDBMS MySQL, so we can see one key which is pending. I mean, on the list which I've done today. Are you tired? Tired? If you're tired, you tell me. I'm not so tired. 15 minutes you can do. 10 minutes. Time. It's almost time. It's almost time. Okay, I'll give you a task here based on what we're doing here. Okay. Given following, here it is. You are given the following entities, such as let me give you the following. We have the animals, and among the animals we have the following. We have, all right, yes, animals. Okay, among the animals we have a dog, cat, hen, cow, dog, right? Dog, and another one which you can have here is lion. We have mouse, eagle. So you have to now you draw an ERD which based on the domestic and domestic and weird animal, right? Weird animals, right? And also domestic or weird on the forest animals. So you can draw this on this one. All right, right. And yeah, you draw this one first. That will be enough for the time which you have. I give you the list of animals which you have here. Dog, cat, hen, cow, dog, lion, mouse, eagles, right? So you're going to draw ERD, which is based on domestic and weird animals. Yeah, on paper, yes. On paper, yes. Yeah, on paper, I'll check. That's not requiring much time. I know your names. I can enter into no problem. Where's your pen? You don't have a paper? Guys, I told you to come with the papers. With a pen, yeah. I mentioned it. Things you can categorize the following items that you have here. Basically, the domestic or the forest.
All the animals are actually. It's all the animals, right?
You design the way you can understand. You can either make them as an entity or you can make them as an app. From domestic connectivity. It can have any of the animals as an artistic can be, you can have an animal, a dog can be an entity, or it can have a context. So you think of it and then make. Yes, please. Come in. Can you yes. And also, amount is one. Yes, please.
I don't know who you mean. Like, there is
Pardon me?
mouse is like can be born. You know, like that's like that. So so it's special with
What?
Yes.
it's a special mouse.
Animal.
It's like
That's a problem.
Yes, please also mention lower leg, longer leg, something like that.
So, can the animals be an entity also?
Which one?
Animals be there,
Which one?
like, or just
I want you to identify what would be the relationship between this. Create the relationship between these two. Because that's the part. Animals are the
Right. But the relationship between
You can use any relationship. Use any relationship. I want to see that you get it.
yeah.
Yes, please. Done. Okay, come in. Where shall I go? Let me.
Would be mammals if it is not animals.
Pardon me?
Is it possible to be mammals if it's not animals? Can you just take a photo or something?
No, no. Okay, you. Right, so
I'm so confused with the relationship.
okay, now I call one by one and take your
Okay. He will call one by one.
domestic animals. Is it running in a weird animal?
They hunt. But then, sir, they eat. They survive.
They jump. They jump. Or they can jump.
They walk. Yeah. All of them walk.
More.
No.
Are you sure? Look, the relationship should be doesn't what is that to this or what is related to this. For example, students and
The relationship between student and course.
yes,
Ah, okay.
relationship between domestic and
Domestic survive.
because they eat it.
No, because they have to run away from
Or they go their
That's
way.
why they have to survive.
So this is
Is it okay?
Mine cannot survive. This is the
Jano, Mr. Jano, yes, sir. Show me what did you do? See the way? Just want to call on by one. So what did you do? Wrong. 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 It's wrong. This is wrong. This is 20, right?
So it must be.
This is
Can,
wrong.
can I add another
No,
entity?
it's
No,
wrong.
right? Sir, can I add another entity?
I'll give you 0 to that. Please show me yours. Wrong. Unakon. No, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything? Not yet? Wrong, this is wrong. Check the mistake. Yours? Yes.
I don't know if I can evaluate you.
This is not correct.
Okay.
This is not correct, but idea is there. Idea is
So
there.
what can be the relationship then?
Ideal nation is not okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's wrong even.
Yeah.
Yeah. I asked you. You told me that. So what can be the relationship?
This one, domestic in the wheel.
Yeah, they can live in human, but outside, this one can live.
For example, you may put domestic fears wheel.
Oh,
So
There's
the
the
relationship.
Wait. So what's the relationship?
Animals. Animals is not a verb.
It should be verb.
Should be a verb.
so this is the key, right?
Domestic fears. When you see the letter,
So, so this is what I wrote, right?
Relationship is
no, no,
entity, domestic,
no, 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 no. Animals is not a relationship.
entity.
So you put either, it can be either a verb. Both are animals, yes. They are rated to be animals, but mainly relationship has to be a verb.
So periods here.
Yeah, you can put either fears. Domestic fears we are animals. So that relationship which they may have built. What relationship is between these two?
Relationship between Dwayne.
They
Both are animals, yes.
Yeah.
Both are animals. So
Relationship.
if they are animals, then both can be, give me your pencil. Both can be, animal is what? Animal is it a verb or is an entity? Then this will be the what? Attribute. Where domestic will be attribute. And then you can build them.
What's this?
Yes.
Just like that.
Okay, this is at least this it make they're separate.
Yeah.
If you want to make, you can build a relationship between them, right?
Yeah, one should manage because
Yes.
The one that plays
Yeah.
Hands. This okay, correct. This you can put here. This can be here, so that can be way easy way to read it. Weird hands maybe domestic. Yeah, that's correct. Correct.
So I need to change that something else, right?
No.
So already that's a period.
Okay, correct.
I showed you.
You? What's yours? Hmm? What is this?
Feeding.
Feeding.
This one is finding the food.
Okay, find the food. We can feed or eat. Okay, correct. The
Okay.
way they can eat. The way they can eat that. No.
Entity, animals and entity.
Animals and entity, right?
Yeah. This relationship.
Okay, correct. Consist. Domestic consist animals.
Animal consists. Right?
Okay, correct. Correct. Hmm? Can you please check the mistake which you made here? What mistake is here?
Animals, entity. Then my animals are two different entities. They don't have any.
What mistake did you put here?
Uh, uh, so there's no relationship.
Well,
Because these two should be.
They should be the
Is
entity.
it Daniel? Okay.
So animals.
What is yours?
So can I make them all tribute?
Oh, you made all attribute, correct, at least. But there is no relationship.
I mean, there's only one entity.
One entity. Okay, correct. It makes sense.
So
Correct.
animals.
Correct.
Animals. Then I put it into different vertebrates.
What is this?
Multi-value. Pets can be multi-value like
That's
dogs.
fine, but this relationship is what?
There's no relation. This is entity.
You remove?
Yeah. Because I put it entity first,
Okay.
but then they confuse me with relation.
Okay.
Then I have multi-value
Okay.
farm.
Fine.
And
Fine.
cow.
Fine.
Then
If
I
you
buy
made this
that.
as an entity, fine. I
And
agree.
then weak entity because it only has two compared
Fine.
to it.
Chandra, fine. I agree. Domestic breed. Correct. Oh, yours and Kunakon, I didn't see yours.
Sir, what's the mistake?
What is this? It's not a fear. It's not a fear.
Hands?
How did you write it? You showed me? Yeah. Mr. He didn't. Who else? Jonathan?
What about this?
Correct. Weird animals, hands. Correct. It can be. And you take a bit.
Sir, my paper. We have test. We have test.
No, I just want to check each and every one of you. Listen, what I said, it was very simple. And I showed you the symbols you have to use, right? So, correct. All right, so now I saw each and every one of you. Then I will update your point. Feel free, check your mistake. Check the mistake which you made. Yeah, you can go, you can go. You're welcome. No, wrong.
What is wrong?
This is a relationship.
Between the cat and the lion.
Relationship should be a verb. This is wrong. And also don't mix like this. Don't cross each link.
Oh, okay. But without this, then it's
It's
okay.
wrong. It's wrong. It's still wrong. A verb should be a relationship. This you can make it as an entity. Verb. It's a hand. It can be an entity. You can either make it as a multiple. This is wrong. Yeah.
Animal contain domestic. Animal contain wild.
Correct.